WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, Accra, and an hour late in Praia, 1 p.m. in Abuja and Porto Novo. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Citizens and civil society in Togo set July 25 for memorial march in honor of victims of June protests.
The
burden of grief should not be carried only by the families of the victims. It is up to each citizen to feel concerned and to pay tribute to those who have fallen.
Rendre hommage à ceux qui sont tombés.
Teachers Association in Ghana issued a 3-month ultimatum to President Mahama to declare state of emergency on illegal mining. And Gambia is against looted asset protest against unresolved alleged cases of corruption by government.
Gambian power! Gambian power! African power! Gambian power! Gambian!
And health authorities in Guinea raise alarm over surge in cases of mpox. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. Newslink this afternoon begins in Togo as citizens and civil society organizations have announced a new date to march in memory of victims of deadly June protest. The memorial march, to be staged on Friday, July 25, 2025, was initially scheduled for July 16 and 17, but was called off due to the municipal elections on July 17. As a reminder, the June 26, 27, and 28 demonstrations, mobilized by social media influencers and bloggers in the diaspora, demanded the resignation of 4 Nyasingbe president of the Council of Ministers. Emo Edit has the rest of the story.
Initially scheduled for July 14, 2025, and then banned by the authorities, the Citizens' March in memory of the victims of the June protests is now scheduled for July 25, 2025 in Lomé. Professor David Dose says the march is at the initiative of Novation International and other civil society organizations.
Le fardeau du deuil ne doit pas être seulement porté par les familles des victimes.
The burden of grief should not be carried only by the families of the victims. It is up to each citizen to feel concerned and to pay tribute to those who have fallen. Innovation International calls on each citizen to gather and, for those who can, assemble on Friday at 11 a.m. to take part in a silent citizen procession, to go to the lagoon, to pay homage to those who fell.
Afin de rendre hommage à ceux qui sont tombés.
The initial date of the demonstration was rejected by the Minister of Territorial Administration, who cited the risk of disruption during the election campaign.
Le Togo est un pays, malheureusement, avec une très forte restriction de l'espace civique.
Togo is a country with a very strong restriction on the civil space. The Ministry of Territorial Administration asked that this activity not be done on July 14 because Togo is in an election campaign. This activity could counteract the election campaign. It is for this reason that rather than the 14th, we decided to pay tribute to the victims on July 25. We really want to do this activity so that everyone remembers those who fell, so that freedom, democracy, and the rule of law are a reality in our country.
Through this peaceful march, Togolese civil society actors wish to reiterate that the right to protest is guaranteed by the Constitution. They also continue to demand the resignation of Foy Nyasingbe, President of the Council of Ministers.
CV Wadrago's report presented by Imo Edit. Elsewhere, hundreds of youth under the Gambians Against Looted Assets Gala are currently staging a protest in the capital, Banjul. Gala's objective is to pressure the government into expediting investigation and prosecution of individuals involved in several alleged state scandals estimated at millions of dollars. The group's first demonstration months ago called for an open inquiry about the fraudulent sales of properties of former President Yahya Jammeh to senior state officials. More than 20 prosecutors were arrested during that protest. Gambians Against Looted Assets says it appreciates the ongoing probe by the parliamentary committee, but insists that corruption and embezzlement of public funds must end. Babukar C. is deputy spokesperson for Gala, and he has been speaking with WADR.
Yeah, the ex-president's assets, of course, there's an investigation going on. A committee has been set up by the National Assembly who are calling on witnesses, and it's broadcasted on state TV and other media houses in the country. So we are watching the process closely. But that is not why we are coming out on Wednesday. We are coming out to demand answers on the sales of Russian oil. More than $30 million amount of Russian oil illegally entered this country. It was sold in this country and proceeds all taken away, without these people involved, not paying tax or withholding tax, and we are asking why. The second issue that we are protesting is about the 66 plus babies that died because of an expired syrup that was imported into the country. Until today, there's nothing said about it, and justice must be served. Another issue we also want answers from is our ports, the port authority. You understand there is almost $300 million that got missing. Until date, nobody is taken to court, no one is held responsible, and they want to bury the matter. Our football also is in shambles. We have an association leading Gambian football for almost 12 years now. Millions of dollars have been pumped in from FIFA for infrastructural development. You can crisscross the length and breadth of the country from Katong to Koina. You can't see any playable pitch. So we are asking, where are these funds? It's too many things going on in this country.
Babukar C. is the deputy spokesperson for Gala. But now let me take you to the grounds and hear some of the concerns of the protesters.
I heard the president say that when he goes to bed, he doesn't sleep because he's angry. So we want to tell him he should sleep. We are more angry than him because all that is happening in this country affects us, not him. He has the security, the economic, the police, the NIA, the immigration, all the security. And he's the budget under his belt. So he has everything. Why should he not sleep? We are the ones that are hungry. Our babies are dying. 66 floors. The fares, the increase in fuel, in gas, all the corruption, our hospitals, our mothers are dying. So if anybody should be angry, it should be us, the masses. It should be us, the citizens. It should be us who sometimes we're not even certain of our daily life. So anger is not him. So we want him, telling him to sleep. We are angry. Let us
So that's a live reaction from the protesting ground in the Gambia at the moment. Away from matters of protest, let's turn attention to some continental development issues because the African Union has relaunched mediation talks with the Alliance of the Sahel States or the AES Confederation, thereby drawing regional attention. Record discussions began several weeks ago following a visit of the AU envoy to Bamako, Ouagadougou and Niamey. The deteriorating security and humanitarian situation, as well as the return to constitutional rule, were prioritized during the engagement. On Monday, Mali's transitional president General Assimi Goïta and Burundian President Evariste Ndayishimiye had a phone conversation on fostering political dialogue and encouraging Mali's return to constitutional order. Ndayishimiye is AU's newly appointed special envoy to the Sahel. While intensified dialogue may be timely, what will be the success rate of the mediation when authorities in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger have already adopted decrees extending their stay in power? Ibrahim Akan, an AU governance expert, shares his thought on the matter.
In the recent months, the Sahel countries were confronted with very serious security and humanitarian issues. we didn't hear anything from the African Union, maybe because they changed leadership or something like that. But usually African solidarity needs to be shown every time an African country is facing problems. So that said, I'm glad that the African Union has finally decided to identify a president coming from Central African region, but a general who is the person who is supposed to talk to the AS people, not only about the relationship with the African Union, but also what kind of role the AU can play in the current discussion that the AS and ECOWAS will be starting very soon about the separation. So I think it's timely. It's also very important that they designate a general because army people know how to talk to each other. Army people know how to really try to deal with some of these security issues, and to what extent, from his own assessment, the region needs support from the AU, he will be able to advise on the best way to do that.
Ibrahim Akan is AU governance expert, and he will be joining us in the second half of the news for more analysis on this development.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's get to Nigeria now, where players and regulators of the West Africa's oil and gas sector are making a fresh push for regional pricing benchmark for petroleum products. At a key industrial meeting in Abuja, they said current global pricing standards fail to reflect Africa's supply chain realities and discourage much-needed investment. WADR's Abuja correspondent Yusma Umar reports.
At the ongoing two-day Global Commodity Insights Conference on West Africa's refined fuel market in Abuja, regulators, industry leaders and policy experts from across the sub-region gathered to confront the region's deepening reliance on imported fuel. Participants are drawn from ECOWAS states including Sierra Leone, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire and Benin. The Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Farouk Ahmed, told the conference that global pricing benchmarks are no longer fit for purpose in the African context. He said the absence of a regional price index is distorting fuel markets and deterring investments.
The regional supply of fuels in Africa has grown through improved refining capabilities in Nigeria, Ghana, Niger, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire, which currently stands at about 1.335 million barrels per day. Our statistical data for supply into West Africa region reveals that about 2 million metric tons per month of gasoline is being traded, consisting of about 1.44 million metric tons, which is 69% of imported products into the region, in addition to about 0.61 million tons, or 31% refining contribution from our own region.
Delegates from Accra, Freetown and Nairobi praised Nigeria's ongoing petroleum sector reforms under the Petroleum Industry Act, which seeks to position the country as a key fuel logistics hub thanks to improved infrastructure and new investments. Representatives from Nigeria's Ministry of Petroleum announced a collaboration between the NMDPRA and S&P Global to develop tailored price indices for refined petroleum products, tools said to be critical for price transparency and market stability across West Africa. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
The University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, is ramping up pressure on the Mahama administration to honor its anti-Galamsey pledge. The association has issued an ultimatum to President John Dramani Mahama, demanding bold action, including a state of emergency in Galamsey-prone areas, strict enforcement of mining laws, and sanctions against political actors complicit in illegal mining. UTAG warns it will not hesitate to resort to industrial action if the government fails to act. Nadede Tete has more in this report.
The University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, argues that 6 months after President Mahama assumed office, his government has yet to deliver the decisive measures required to tackle illegal mining, a menace the association describes as an existential threat to Ghana's environment and livelihoods. While not in direct response to UTAG, Defense Minister Dr. Omane Boama, speaking at the government's accountability series, insisted the administration remains committed to fighting galamsey.
The Ghana Armed Forces have played significant supporting roles in the fight against illegal mining, galamsey. We are not out of the woods yet as a nation, but there is hope because there is a political will at the very top. We have reviewed the fight against illegal mining and have worked with stakeholders to reform the fight.
Reacting to the broader issue, Secretary of the University of Ghana chapter of UTAG, Dr. Jerry Joe Harrison, acknowledged efforts made but said only a state of emergency would demonstrate true resolve.
Sometimes politicians say one thing and they mean the other. I don't want to doubt the will that the minister talks about. They have 3 months. If they have alternatives that they think is going to work better, we are continuously monitoring what's happening. And so if government doesn't declare state of emergency and we see that our water bodies are recovering and our forest reserves have been empty of these individuals, fair enough. I mean, all that we are looking for are the solutions. What we think is happening is that their solutions have not yielded the results, and so maybe it's time to adopt our solution.
UTAG has warned of possible industrial action if decisive steps are not taken, a move that could significantly disrupt academic work. For WADR, Nadede Tete, Accra.
You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. We are also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Citizens and civil society in Togo set July 25 for memorial march to honor victims of June protest, and Teachers Association of Ghana issues 3-month ultimatum to President Mahama to declare state of emergency on illegal mining, and Gambians against looted asset protest against unresolved alleged cases of corruption by the government. Still ahead in the news, health authorities in Guinea raise alarm over the surge in cases of mpox. We do have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Guinea, the health crisis associated with the resurgence of mpox is becoming more complicated. A new death has been confirmed by the National Agency for Health Security, marking a new stage in the progression of the disease across the country. In its weekly epidemiological bulletin, the agency reports 7 ongoing disease outbreaks in the country, including mpox epidemic, which currently affects 12 health districts. Francis Boniface reports.
A total of 271 positive cases of mpox have been recorded since the new wave, according to the latest epidemiological reports by the National Agency for Health Security, published Tuesday. Of this, 55 patients have recovered, while several remain hospitalized in specialized treatment centers. 18 new cases were detected in the last 24 hours, according to the health authorities. The agency also reports that 241 people identified as direct contacts of the patients are currently being monitored by its services as part of the response plan in place. Another key element of the report indicates that 70% of the cases recorded involve men. This trend, the agency says, will be a motivating factor for awareness and prevention campaigns. Monkeypox is primarily transmitted through close contact with an infected person or their bodily fluids, and causes symptoms such as fever, fatigue, rash, and muscle pain. Given this situation, Guinean health authorities are calling on the population to remain vigilant, adhere to hygiene measures, and seek prompt medical attention if symptoms appear. Health teams are currently deployed on the ground for screening, community outreach, and treatment of confirmed cases.
A report by WAD Austiano Alpha Ibrahim Baudi and voiced by Francis Boniface. Still on matters of health, but in the Gambia, the Ministry of Health has announced the detection of the first case of monkeypox, also known as mpox, in the country, while calling for calm among the population. In an official statement released on Tuesday, Gambian health authorities reported a case of mpox, stating that it was identified on July 18th, thanks to routine surveillance system implemented by the country. However, the ministry says the patient is stable and is responding well to treatment under strict monitoring.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Sankule Janko from the Gambia for the press review.
Let's begin today's newspaper review with the Standard newspaper, whose lead story reads, Dabo tells supporters empty talk will not remove Barrow. Dabo is the opposition leader and the Secretary General and party leader of the opposition United Democratic Party, UDPA. This other one reads, a woman convicted for insulting president. July 22 replaced the constitutional order with tyranny. This one reads, Banjul host ECOWAS communications officers training to combat misinformation. And this one reads, Abuko car drifter remanded at mile 2. We head to the Point newspaper, and the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, millions lost due to visual estimates in sale of Jame cattle. That is the front page story for the Point newspaper. And this other one reads, drifter who allegedly knocked student at Abuko school remanded. Power announces Professor Cherno Omar Bari as its vice president. Gambia-Senegal customs collaborations strategic for prosperity. We head to the Voice newspaper, and the lead story on the Voice newspaper reads, GLMA director faces NAMS for mishandling Jame cattle sales. Still on the front page of the Voice newspaper, woman convicted of insulting President Barrow fined $40,000. Retired captain launches new political party slams President Barrow. And this other one reads, anti-FGM case resumes before Supreme Court. And finally, let's go to the Fourier newspaper, and the lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads, calls grow to protect victims' families from inheritance disputes over reparations. Court strikes out bail application for alleged human trafficker Treasure. And this other one reads, please lie exposed in court. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Sankule Janko, for the press review.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview this afternoon focuses on the African Union relaunched mediation talks with the Alliance of the Sahel States. During discussions on returning to constitutional rule, deteriorating security and humanitarian situation began last week following a visit of the AU envoy to Bamako, Ouagadougou and Niamey. Now, the big question is, while the intensified dialogue may be timely, what will be the success rate of the mediation when the authorities in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niamey have adopted decrees extending their stay in power? Our guest is Ibrahim Akan, an AU governance expert, and he shares more light on this matter.
Are the AES countries likely now to receive support from the EU, and in what areas? Because at the start of this conversation, you actually said that the region has in recent months faced serious security and humanitarian crisis.
What is also very interesting in the conversation between the AES country and the AU is that all the three countries are suspended from participating in the AU activities because of the coup that they organized. And the way that they decided about the transition even make it very complicated for the AU to agree to accept them back in the institution, because there was no election. They designated their president, and if you see, the three countries have adopted the same rules: 5 years for the president, and definitely who can renew his mandate indefinitely. And those kind of measures, are not measures that can really help for their return to the AU. I think this is part of the conversation that they will be having. How are they going now to really deal with a real transition, not the fake transition that is happening? Because they, at the end of the day, even if the AU has now implemented some of its rule in a very smooth matter, but at least you need to organize an election. It happened in Chad. The president organized election, if those good election or not, but in Gabon, they organized election. The position of the mediator is really, really very complicated because it's not just about security issues, it's about economic issues, and it's about some of the serious political issues in the region that he has to deal with. And now, I don't know to what extent the continent, because it's also happening at the time where AU itself is weak. AU, for instance, said African Charter on Democracy, Election and Governance is saying that even a person who is a coup cannot participate in election, or cannot even if the person decides to leave the army, cannot be the head of state. You understand? So in that particular context, the margin of maneuvering of the AU is also very, very slim.
And talking about the fact that the success of this particular mission is slim, what do you see? Is it right if I ask what is at stake, or do I ask if you foresee compromise amongst all parties involved in this? AU, the AES as a factional bloc, and the ECOWAS?
Well, I think we all know what is at stake at the moment. The first big important issues at stake is the issue of democracy in Africa. Is the AU able to really maintain or to really make sure that its member states are applying the norms on democracy on the continent? I'm not quite sure. More and more coups are happening, and even when coups happen, the way that the attitude of the AU is so volatile, so it's no longer strong. Two, it's also about the future of military regimes in Africa. I'm not talking about you see how very easily in Chad and Gabon, the military managed to come back to normality. But in Guinea-Conakry, we are also in the same trend. And the IS countries are saying that they won't leave in the next 5 years. So the credibility of the region, of the continental organization is at stake. Are we going to continue to accept a military regime where we have a normative framework that said, no, there is no compromise with the military system? That's a very serious problem. And the last point is also about the security of the continent, because we like it or not. If you recall, when AU did the assessment of the first 10 years of implementation of the Agenda 2063, the report was saying that 75% of the AU resources were spent on peace and security on the continent. So we have now 3 years of the second phase. I'm afraid, but we will probably reach 80% of the resources spent on peace and security again. When are we going to really make sure that the Agenda 2063 is implemented?
Our guest is Ibrahim Akan, an AU governance expert. And Augustine Cole is here with details in the world of sports. Augustine, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris. As the preparations intensify for the upcoming 2024 CAF African Nations Championship CHAN, The home base Super Eagles of Nigeria continuing their build-up of a solid 3-1 victory over NPFL side Ikorodu City in a friendly match held at the Remo Star Sports Complex in Ikening. Goals from Junior Ndukal, Antonin Njoma and Sikuru Alimin sealed the win for the Eagles, who are ramping up readiness for the Continental Tournament, which will be co-hosted by Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. Nigeria have been drawn in Group D, where they will face tough competition from Congo and Sudan, as well as the title holder Senegal, as they aim for CHAN glory. Finally, Crystal Palace has lodged an appeal with the Court of Arbitration for Sports after being dropped from the Europa League to the UEFA Conference League. That's the latest.
Well, Augustine, our prediction about an all-West African encounter in the WAFCON could not come through. Rather, the finals is between Nigeria, and your prediction was right. Nigeria and Morocco are up for the finals.
West Africa and North Africa.
For the quarterfinals as well. For the third
final.
and fourth place as well.
Yeah, for the third and fourth place. No, South Africa.
South Africa and Ghana for the third
so
and
that will
fourth
be
place
West
as well.
and South Africa
as well.
for the semi-finals.
Well, and with that, we've come to the end of this afternoon's edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Fali Luso and Shekenjai for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. I am Christopher Ticho. Good afternoon and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to News